here are the steps that we're going to go through. I'd like to bring your attention to the middle section, beginning where it says email 1, because part of the process is for you to select which emails those notices will go to. And I want everyone to remember that email 1 is the DeKalb County email for the patron. If it is a teacher receiving the notice, it will be the teacher's DeKalb County email address. If it is a student receiving the notice, then it will be their DeKalb County email address. Email 3 is a parent email, and that is imported from Infinite Campus. Whatever email is included in the first prioritized contact block in Infinite Campus for the student, that's going to be in email 3. Now you see that's email 1 and email 3. I believe there are actually 5 email fields, and if you select a field that doesn't have an email address in it, the notice won't go anywhere. I also want you to remember that whatever you name or whatever name you give to the setup, and you'll see that in the process, that name of the report is going to be the subject line for the emails. So make sure that you type in something that's going to make sense to the people receiving the email. And then finally, I will go through how you will email notices to homeroom teachers. There is a setup involved with that I will share with the teacher librarians because it requires the admin login. Okay, so I'm going to move out of the PowerPoint and we're going to go into Destiny. So you should now be viewing the Austin Library Destiny site. And the first thing I'm going to do is log in. And for this, I'm going to use my teacher librarian email. Okay, so we're in here. We are going to go at the top menu to reports, patron reports, and current checkouts and fines. And if you have run these reports, even if they were printed in your school, one of your school libraries, then you'll know at the top is a list of saved reports and notices. And I have quite a few in the Austin site. Notice, remember what I said about how whatever you name it, whatever you name the report or set up is going to be what the patrons see and their parents see in the email. So I sent out an emailed book notice accidentally on April 20th. I was doing something else, trying to help somebody else with a problem, and I accidentally hit send when I did not mean to. Well, in between 10:49 a.m. when I sent it and then 11:20 when I decided that I had to do something because I was being inundated with emails because I had told people what books were due, but I didn't give them any instructions for when or where to return their books. And of course, they were trying to do what return the books, but I had not given them information. So finally, I decided the easiest way to address it was just to resend the exact same thing that I had just sent out accidentally, but including a different message and a different subject line. So that was "so sorry, disregard previous notice." So all of the saved ones are at the top, and you can decide if you remember which is which. I like to include the word email usually. I have not done it for all of these because that's all I do now. I do not print out and deliver notices, especially in this time where people are concerned about, transmission by touching. Emailing is definitely the way to go. You could just rerun them. You could click the button to edit that report and then of course save it as something else. But let's go down to just creating it for the very first time. So we are now at the very bottom of the screen. We're in the set up a new report or notice. And by the way, I'm sorry that I forgot to say this, my dear library media assistants. If you have a question about the task that I am demonstrating, please feel free to unmute your microphone and ask it at that time. If you think of a question that it does not pertain to this specific task, please type it in the chat box. Pam is going to be monitoring that, and when we take a break between each task, she will pose those questions. Okay. So first of all, we have to decide what materials will be included in the notices that we email. We are going to have to keep the check mark next to show, because we definitely want to show something. And those are the materials. You can either leave it as those that are currently overdue, which we would do during the regular school system, or if you need to just make people aware of what they currently have checked out, you can select this, all that are checked out. And of course, all of these are also options, and you can set some parameters. Anything pertaining to resources, we will uncheck. Resource Manager is another module in Destiny that is used for textbooks and other items, and that does not fall under the purview of the library media program. So we will uncheck anything that has to do with resources. And then it's most important to remember that the format is going to be a notice. Now, if we are sending it to emails, to homerooms, then we would click this. But I'm a little frustrated, I guess, with Destiny that they don't include email down here as an option for notices. Of course, that all has to do with coding. That's what those are the directions that tell Destiny what to show. Just know that it is notices, and that you can also decide if you want to send them in Spanish. It won't translate the titles into Spanish or the names, but the actual directions for the notice the headings and things will be in Spanish for patrons. Okay, so we're going to leave it at English and hit continue. So now we are going to limit the patrons who receive this message. We're going to start over here. I just kind of work my way, just like you're reading a page, from left to right and then all the way down. So we start with update the patrons. And you can decide if you want to send an email notice to faculty and student, or only one or the other. I'm going to leave it as both for right now. And then I'm going to click OK. Going across to status, I always make sure that I'm only including active patrons. If you are a high school and you wanted to contact the seniors, then you could utilize this graduating text option. And then whether or not you include patrons of other sites that have your materials probably is going to determine if you are an elementary school library and for whatever reason you weren't able to get all of your books back before students went on to the next school, or maybe you are a generous librarian or library and you honor other people's requests, especially teachers, of course, to borrow materials from your school. Then you can check that box. I do know that we have materials that are out to other teachers throughout the district, so I'm going to leave that included. The next option is My Materials, and I'm going to update so I can select different circulation types. I'm going to take off ebooks, because when a patron borrows an ebook, it's not something that they physically take out or bring back to the library. So I don't want to include that in this notice. So I will leave it. And I'm also going to take out equipment. Well, I'll leave an equipment because I left in teachers, but of course that would be only something that faculty would be made aware of. We are going to uncheck resources. We do that with anything that pertains to resources. If we click on update, then you see the kinds of things that can be cataloged in Resource Manager. It doesn't mean that they necessarily are, but those are some of those options. I'm just going to click OK to go back. And then finally, you can decide whether or not you want to include the materials that your patrons have from other sites. And if you are in a middle or high school, you might want to include those items that students have from previous schools that they have attended. Click continue. Since these are going to be emailed out, you probably are going to want to send to all faculty or all students, but you do have some options. You can decide to send only for a specific grade level. You can send to a specific homeroom. Those are the two other ways that you can limit who receives the notice. This is key. We are not going to be distributing the notices internally. That's with printed on paper and delivered to teachers' mailboxes or to their classrooms. It will be through email. And whoever is sending the email should be the email address that is included. For display name, I think it should be the school library. So I'm going to type in Austin, and then you see it pops up because that's what has been in there previously, Austin Elementary Library. And I'm going to type in my email address. Now the test email button right here is just to make sure that it has the right address. And if you click the test email button, which I will do, okay, it says test email sent, please verify it was received. So if I were to go in now and check my Outlook account, I would see an email that is coming from Destiny. It would not be what I have checked out. It is simply a test email to make sure that Destiny has my email address typed in correctly. I know of one person who has sent that test email numerous times and never received it, and yet she was still able to send out notices and receive responses back. So we're going to work on that. And if you test your email and don't receive it, check your junk email folder. It should still work just fine. Now for a little test. My students, we have 5 email options here. Can someone please unmute and tell me which 2 of these we can use and what information is in each one of those?
Number 1 is DeKalb for teachers, and number 3 is parents.
Very good. And that's excellent. And the first email is going to be the DeKalb email address for teachers or students. So no, that's okay. We're going to check both of those. You could choose one or the other. Usually in an elementary school, I only used email 3 for parents because our students just did not use email very much in the elementary school. So you can decide whatever's best for you. Now down here, page layout, I don't think is going to make a difference because again, these aren't being printed. They are being emailed. This tiny text box is where you are going to type a message, such as students will be able to return books on Monday, October, because I feel like that's when we're going to go back to school. In the box outside main office from 7 a.m. to 7:15. Very silly message, but you would type in what's the real information. And one thing that we found helps is to add a couple of returns and put some space at the end of your message, because then in the email, it will put some space in the email between the message and the actual items. Okay, so then at the bottom, we have to choose what other information from Destiny is included. Of course, we're going to want to include the title for the library material. You may wish to include the cover image because that shows a picture, and when students don't remember the title, usually they will recognize that cover image. And you'd probably also want to, well, I don't know whether you need to include the barcode, but if a parent is emailing you back, it might give you an easy way to access that patron's record. All right, now I'm not going to click run. That got me in trouble before. I'm going to click on Save Setup. Now, who can unmute and tell me what is important to remember when I'm giving this new report a name?
It appears on the subject line of the email.
Yes. Whatever you type here is going to show up as the subject line of the email. So you might want to include something like notice of, and then you see what I used last time, notice of overdue books from Austin Library. The email portion, what I have in parentheses, is really for me to be able to see that it is an email. Now, if you create this report and get those right parameters, this can be a set it and forget it kind of task, because you can actually schedule the emails to be sent automatically. If you click on the down arrow, it will give you the option of sending it daily, which I have been known to do at the end of the year. It is a little obnoxious, but when we're trying to get in all the books at the end of the year, it goes out to fewer and fewer patrons. And if they want me to leave them alone, they can just bring in their books. I do it weekly during the year. And I also send it home on Thursday because that suits our school community. The students take home a packet. It's not as thick as it used to be because we do a lot less with paper. But if the teacher is returning any graded work, or there's information about field trips, a form that needs to be signed and returned, it goes home in what we call the Thursday information packet. So I scheduled it to go out on Thursdays, every single Thursday at 3 p.m. So that's right around the time that students will be dismissed. So it's very close to when they'll be home. And I'm going to click Save Setup, but not Save and Run. And then you will be able to see now we have that same notice listed in our saved reports or notices. I know that it is an email because I included that in the name that I gave it. But notice how now it says scheduled every Thursday at 3 p.m. Well, today's Thursday. I don't want it to go out at 3 p.m. So I'm going to come over here and delete it. Are sure? Yes, I'm sure, because I do not want to go through that again. All right, so those are the steps for creating a report that allows you to email notices of either books overdue or checked out to your patrons. Do you have any questions? Valid. And if Destiny tries to send an email to an email address that is not valid, it will bounce back to the sender's email address.